Hi, Alvin DeLeon here, and you are watching episode 19 of the 3-Minute Health Tip. In this episode, we're going to discuss this concept that I call conscious parenting and how it relates to really this new health perspective of GNM and the 5 biological laws. Now, I define conscious parenting as being conscious of your children's emotional state as often as possible. And the fact is that only when our children present with a physical symptom can we now look back and recognize what it was that created a biological conflict, an unexpected shock or distress for them. And by getting information and being conscious of what those things are, we start to get an understanding of how we can create an environment that can potentially allow our children to not be around those triggers or tracks that lead to their symptoms and prevent them potentially from having chronic symptoms. Now, one of the more common things that I tend to say a lot in my clinical practice, and perhaps some of you have heard this in some of my presentations, is that each child is different. And because they are different, they all interpret how we communicate with them very differently. So you can have 3 children respond to how you talk to them in different ways, right? If you're very stressed and you're rushing to get them ready for school, perhaps one day you're going to hear yourself saying, listen, if you don't get your coats on and get in the car, I'm going to leave you behind. You can have 3 different children hearing that a different way. For child number 1, that could be a shock, thinking that you're actually going to abandon them, that you're actually going to leave them behind, and they take it literally. For child number 2, that could be a shock that scares them, not so much because you're going to leave them, but because you raised your voice, because you were yelling. They get scared and they don't like to hear that. And you can have child number 3 that doesn't care at all, that you can yell and scream all you want, you can threaten them as much as you want. They know you're never going to follow through on it. As a conscious parent, you start to recognize each children's vulnerabilities and tendencies and sensitivities based on the symptoms that they present with. So if you had child number 1 that is always feeling left out or abandoned and they start to have unexplained weight gain, then it affects their kidney collecting tubules and they're interpreting your comments of leaving them behind as an abandonment conflict. You could have child number 2 that tends to always get a chronic cough. You know, they lose their voice, they've always got a bronchitis or a laryngitis, then that means that they have generally interpret things as a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear around them. So you have to be conscious of that and create an environment that potentially minimizes those fears. Maybe you don't yell at child number 2 the way you might to child number 3. Child number 3 gets no symptoms. So perhaps you can be a little bit tougher with child number 3. They can seem to have thicker skin or take it a little bit better. And so as a conscious parent, you become aware of each child's personality, each child's sensitivity, and you can accordingly create an environment that allows them to not only be healthy and happy, but to not have any ongoing or chronic symptoms. So I hope that this video or health tip makes sense to all you parents out there as you look at your children and the symptoms that they tend to present with. Really start implementing this conscious parenting in your family's life as you start to learn about each child's sensitivities and how you can create an environment that can minimize those fears, the abandonments, the angers, so on and so forth. I want to thank you again for your attention, and I look forward to seeing you at the next episode.